And we call it interest rate risk. So people who buy bonds issued by corporations or governments, they face this so-called interest rate risk. So it's the fact that the value of the bonds on their hands will be fluctuating whenever interest rates change. Turns out that when you buy bonds, right? So now you're a bond holder, you own bonds. And so it turns out that your bond value will be going up and down, right? So fluctuate significantly more if the bonds that you hold have a longer time to maturity, or if they have a lower coupon rate. So let's see what's the intuition behind these, two factors that affect the interest rate sensitivity of bond value. Let's consider this figure. This is figure 7.2 in our textbook. On the horizontal axis, we have the interest rate. That's the yield to maturity, the IY in the financial calculator. On the vertical axis, we have bond value in dollars. Then we know that the relationship between the interest rate and the bond present value is negative, right? We just had it on one of the earlier slides. And that's why we see the lines sloping down and to the right. Now, why are there two lines? Why not one? Because we are comparing two bonds. The green line is a downward sloping line for a bond that has 30 years left to maturity. It's a 30-year bond. The blue line, which is a lot less steep, is for a different bond, which has only 1 year left to maturity. So it's kind of, a very long-term bond and a very short-term bond. What do we see going on here? Imagine you changed your interest rate, the yield to maturity, the IY in the financial calculator. So you change it, let's say, from 5%, increase it to 10%, then increase it to 15%, then increase it to 20%, and recalculate the bond value for each of the two bonds. When you do that, so you will be getting new numbers for the bond values, right? If you plot the results on this figure, you would get these two lines, the blue line and the green line. The blue line for the 1-year bond, which is almost flat, and the green line for the 30-year bond, which is a lot steeper. Right? So it kind of comes from the calculations that you can actually, try doing yourself. It could be a good practice. And so bottom line, the steeper line for the 30-year bond, the bond with more time left to maturity, has a much higher interest rate sensitivity. So the bond value is very sensitive to changes in the interest rates, in the yield to maturity, right? Whereas the 1-year bond with a flatter line has little fluctuations in bond value when the interest rate is changed, right? There's almost no effect on the bond value. It's always around $1,000 on this figure, even if we double or triple the interest rate. So make it from not 5% but 10% or 15%, right? The bond value is still very close to $1,000. So very small drop in bond value. So that's the interest rate sensitivity depending on how much time is left until maturity. That's what this figure summarizes. And the intuition, I just said that you can verify that this is what will be happening. If you try changing the interest rate and recalculate the bond value and see how big the changes are. But there's also a different kind of an intuitive explanation for why this is happening. So consider a longer time to maturity bond. If it's, let's say, a 20-year bond or a 30-year bond, which will see coupons being paid over 20 or 30 years, right? Then the $1,000 face value is at the very, very end of this long time period, right? And the $1,000 face value is by far the largest cash flow on our timeline because the coupon payments are significantly smaller. So those would be maybe $50 a year, maybe $100 a year. And because the largest dollar amount, the largest cash flow, the $1,000 face value, is at the very end, when we discount it as, part of finding the bond value, we end up discounting it very heavily. And so any slight change in the interest rate will dramatically affect the present value of the face value of the bond. So if the interest rate goes up, the present value will go down by a lot. And so because it's a huge portion of the sum of all cash flows on the bonds timeline, we end up observing a higher sensitivity of bond value to changes in the interest rates. Turns out there is another factor that plays a role. We get exactly the same higher sensitivity of bond value to interest rate changes if we have a bond with a lower coupon rate. And actually, the interpretation is, the intuition is exactly the same as earlier with longer-term bonds. So think about what a lower coupon rate bond really means. If the coupon rate is low, right, some small percentage, like 3%, 2%, then relatively to the coupon payments, the $1,000 face value will seem like a huge number, right? So the face value is a much higher fraction of all bond payments on the bond payment timeline. And then the rest of the intuition is just like on the previous slides where we looked at the effect of the time to maturity. So because the face value is at the very end, it's discounted very heavily. And so since it's a huge fraction of all bond payments between now and maturity, any slight change in the interest rate dramatically affects the face value, the present value of the face value, which in turn plays a huge role in determining the bond value, right? And so a bond with a lower coupon rate will fluctuate in its value a lot more when interest rate changes. So we observe a higher sensitivity of bond value to changes in the interest rate.